True, 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 true. Yeah, she's going. What?
Men phrase some of their desires. Some desires that they try to represent as just being good things are just like wholly like subjugating women to like certain roles and then finding a way to demonize or blame them based on their girl. So for instance, if somebody were to say, like, here's the thing that I'd be fine with. If somebody was playing the game, they're like, oh my god, I don't know, kind of having a little girl run around is kind of cute or whatever. I feel like I kind of want a family. I feel like maybe this is something maybe I'd be more interested in this than otherwise. It's like, oh okay, yeah, that's cute. But if somebody plays the game and they're like, man, this is really driving my paternal instincts. I hope that women stop being such weird, crazy Westerners that are childless cat ladies that are, for some reason, not giving men the families and babies that every loving person should want to have. I hope that it fixes them. Like, if that's the take, I'm like, okay, well, how did you find a way to just use this to shit on women again? Like, but I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know what the discourse is on this. I have no idea. So I imagine it's probably a mixture of both. I just don't know who's, I guess, louder on this.
own lineage, he's likely a predator. Here I perhaps put too much, labor on the audience to interpret what I meant. I was inferring cases where, single men or gay men pursue adopting or buying a child via surrogacy without a mother involved in the process. And I do think that that's predatory. And it's predatory in the worst cases, of course, but in most cases just terrible for the child because a man...
I was just trying to fucking flip that shit real fast. Apparently, if you want to adopt, guys, you know the same way
I'm terminally online, and it's definitely the second one. Tweets like that get 70,000 likes. I'm not even joking. Okay.
Want to adopt is probably predator. Thoughts?
Yep, absolutely right. If you're a man, you want to. That's so stupid.
It's my perspective that men do not have the capacity to feel for children the way that women do, and I don't know if I've found a better way
That's a crazy statement, but okay.
to articulate it than women are maternal in a more noticeable way than men are naturally maternal.
Let's say, you're right, that's true. What does that matter? It means nothing. Just because you more overtly show your emotions doesn't mean I don't feel emotion as strongly. That's essentially the argument.
True.
That person speaks their ideas much louder, so they must speak more. Oh, that person flashes their money much more over.
Like, I don't know how to explain this to you, and I don't even care if you don't care because it's just more women for me. Yeah. Okay, fuck you. Okay, I will destroy my career after this lawsuit. I'm going back to being just the whore I was before. You'll never be able to stop me. I'm gonna exclusively camp outside BPD clinics. I don't know how to tell you this, but like, if you were to ever express something like this, even remotely seriously, even as a joke, like this is the most repulsive. Like women will think you're gross and disgusting and hate you. It doesn't matter how much of a 6'6" Chad you are. Pragmata is destroying years of leftist programming and activating women's ovaries in real time. This is probably one of the most effective forms of birth control in the history of all of mankind. I just don't know how to explain how absolutely disgusting statements like this are, or at least how every single woman will view this in this way.
What?
Jesus.
She's yes. She's so cute. Helmet on.
Diana.
Just puts his helmet on. He's like mid-conversation. I'm out. So good.
Okay, that's a good clip. 70,000 likes. Women do not have beliefs or principles. They go with the crowd, and their immediate group. Once they are exposed to a dominant male figure whose pheromones activate their natural biological process, all previously held beliefs will disappear. This is also an explanation for, literally, all of Donald Trump's cabinet. Pragmata is a sign to counter decades of anti-natalist propaganda and bring up global birth rates.
You got me.
This water gun is the best. I like it just as much as the crayons.
So this whole act you got going on here, I guess you're trying to imitate me.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not even a good simulator. Where's the part where she breaks her own toy and then cries at you for like 12 hours to get her another one because she's upset that she broke her own shit for literally no fucking reason, and then when you finally get her another one, she's moved on to something else and doesn't care about that old toy anymore? Or where's the one where she's crying and insisting that she's in pain and that life is miserable and everything is terrible, but the reality she just needs a nap, but she won't take it for 5 hours, literally no matter fucking what? Or where, like, can we get some actual child simulation here, please? Hello? Where's the one where they're 2 years old and they're running around the house trying to put every single possible thing in their mouth that can kill them? Hello?
I'm gonna need to watch what I say.
Okay. I'm sorry, we're lowering birth rate. Stop.
Overtly. That means
Kids are adorable, though. I mean, they have to be, and you should find them adorable. You're a human being, and we're supposed to like have kids. That's kind of the whole thing. That's how genes work, right? So I mean, if you should find kids to be kind of adorable. You have to, no?
they must have more. That's a brain dead logic that she's showing. What you see on the surface is not a reflection of what actually happens behind closed doors or what the capacity of the individual is. This is also another pet peeve of mine. When people say this bullshit, like criticism. To those denying biology here, would you hire a male babysitter?
Oh, pause. For those denying biology, and then you put a fact that has nothing to do with biology. How does one equate the other? You said, for those denying biology, and you go straight into giving us an argument that has nothing to do with biology. It's like, first, do you know what words mean? Or you're just deciding to go like that willfully ignorant just to prove your point that is not a point? Then when I say people don't know how to argue, they don't know how to bring arguments together that makes it worthy for you to even sit down and have an argument. It's like, oh, debate that person, debate this person. You want me to debate that?
Your kid's kindergarten teacher and it's a dude. How do you feel about that? What do women have that men don't? Are we beginning to understand each other now? Men aren't women. None of this is not against men. It's just true.
Bro, have you seen the amount of women predator these days? Every week there's a new woman predator that used to teach somewhere, and then she's outed to have relationship with her students. What does that mean?
So she's trying to hint at the old differences between men and women from a nurturing standpoint. She goes, would you hire a male babysitter? And I'm like, oh, not. But
Why is everybody so great? Wait, what? Wait, what? You just assume every male baby's gonna be a rapist?
What the fuck? This is crazy.
Maybe we're gonna go on for that. Sorry.
she's trying to hint at the old differences between men and women from a nurturing standpoint. She goes, would you hire a male babysitter? And I'm like, oh, not. But if I had to have a tutor for my kid, I'd probably hire a male. And the idea that men
Okay.
aren't nurturing because like we don't play with dolls. Maybe they don't showcase that at the earliest age, but they do develop it. How many dudes are teachers? Is teaching not a nurturing role? Are men not teachers? Those aren't their kids, but they still make an effort. Think about some of the most influential people in your life, whether it be teachers or whatever that really affected you. Some of the men.
Most coaches that I've seen are men. You can even include gymnastic in there, something that is generally more women. Boom. In their 30s, they become teachers, coaches. When we talk about the mentorship, I see much more men than women, actually.
Pretending like just because men don't necessarily offer nurturing the exact same way, whatever it is. And look, if you really want to have a discussion, you can look at a lot of studies. But single fathers oftentimes outperform single mothers in terms of how the quality of care and the quality of parenting that they can offer. Now, there are some economic reasons for that.
Predominantly economic reasons for that is because the mother by default almost always just gets the child because the man ditches. But like if the man wants to fight for the child, it's probably because he's more often than not, like 90% of the time, is in a dramatically better financial position than the mother. Like the father would have to fight for the child because the mother is the one that gives birth and everything else. Like this dad is going to be in a way better financial position.
Generally, men who position themselves to be single fathers are oftentimes in a better position financially than women are. But that's also a fact. That proves that men are capable of doing the parental role. They are capable of doing the nurturing role even when there's no woman around. They're not lacking something where they can't give that. That doesn't mean that the kid shouldn't have both parents. It just means that y'all pretending like men and women are from like different universes and that there's. I say this all the time.
People just like exaggerate the kind of differences so much. It's just like women are probably slightly more nurturing, but like naturally than men. That would be my guess. There's probably a variety of things you can point to prove that, but it's not going to be like a woman sees a baby and she wants to pick it up and hug it, and a man sees a baby and wants to punt it. People just like exaggerate the kind of differences so much. It's so crazy to me.
Men and women are much more alike than they are different. The differences do matter, they do exist, but the people who pretend like we're like worlds apart.
Destiny, maybe that was true 20 years ago, but women are generally in the same financial bracket now. Generally, there's still a difference, but not nearly as much now. You're completely wrong. Single fathers versus single mothers is what we're talking about, not just general financial capabilities of both parents.
Men and women are much more alike than they are different. The differences do matter, they do exist, but the people who pretend like we're like worlds apart, it's not real. I know plenty of dudes who raise and they do an amazing job and they do a lot of it by themselves. People who are like, oh, men are protectors, and like, women are protectors too. I've seen moms will protect their kids to fucking high heaven. Why does it have to be some singular binary? No, don't deny biology. Show your studies.
Men don't have baby fever. That's bullshit.
I'm sure that's bullshit.
You are?
Yeah, you're right.
That's the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
Well, Mary Morgan chimed in, and she's getting ratio. If a man wants to visit a job for any reason other than it being a part of his own lineage, he is likely a predator. Boy, Mary really pissed people off with that one. My daughter was walking with her walker today, giggling, and I feel tremendous paternal instincts for helping my daughter learn how to walk. I watch this, I see nothing. The Last of Us is fun. It's not just that you play, what was Joel the character, and Ellie? There's like a funny scene where they're walking across like a narrow strip over a river, and he pushes her in and laughs at her. That's the kind of like, there's a paternal instinct in that. This is a teenage girl who's trying to survive, and you're helping her out. There's a paternal thing in there. If this was like a real child, I guess for me, being that it's just a stupid robot, I feel nothing. Again, to point out Spider-Man is the male power fantasy to save all of the children. I mean, like, there's a reason why guys like superhero movies.
What? It's not making sense. He goes on to defend the point in the tick itself, and he sees a lot of reaction to what's happening to her.
So we got a community note on this because her post has 2.3 million views, and it says research shows childless men experience brilliantness.
Okay, you guys are chatting some crazy shit. She's like 9, she's like 6. Ellie in The Last of Us? If I had to guess, she's probably anywhere from like 10 to 12.
13.
6? Chill, Jesus.
No.
Okay, she's 14.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
6?
Yeah.
Chill,
6.
goddamn.
Desire for fatherhood nearly as often as parents, 59 versus 63, and men, including non-parents, exhibit innate caregiving and protective responses to
I
infants.
think the people meant the robot game child. Really? Because he just mentioned the Ellie girl.
I agree with this, but I think people are taking Mary's point to an extreme end, for which I believe she is largely correct.
The people criticizing her are taking it to an extreme, but she said that any man who wants to adopt or whatever is likely a predator.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
Okay, I'll be honest. I see people with strollers all the time. Not once in my life have I ever leaned over to try and look in the stroller to take a look at their baby. Never happened. I've been leaned over to. I see people with strollers all the time. Not once in my life have I ever leaned over to try and look in the stroller to take a look at their baby.
Never.
I can't tell if he's being serious or if he's just trying to make a point for a show because I can't trust anything he says. But like, I don't know. Maybe it's because my parents grew up doing daycare and everything. Babies are adorable. If you're not like looking at a cute fucking baby that's waving his fucking arms around and smiling and laughing and shit, I don't know. I feel like that's crazy. But I don't know.
Never happened.
Is this what we're using now for saying that men don't have a nurturing side or don't have paternal instincts? Yeah, you know why I'm not gonna fucking glance into the stroller? Because I'll get called a predator. Yeah, you know that I just
Okay, but this doesn't happen. I also feel like I'm a preacher in a crazy world sometimes here of being accused of being like, if you look at a baby or talk to a kid or whatever, that you're gonna be accusing me of. I don't know. Maybe in other cities this happens. I've never in my life. Well, besides my court case, had this happen to me where it's like, oh my god, your baby's adorable. You're like, because babies will, if babies catch your eyes, they'll always stare at you because they do that. Because babies just do that shit. I don't think I've ever had somebody be like, are you a predator? Look at my kid in the stroller in the elevator. Maybe for black men it's different. I don't know.
There's an argument to both people, and it's on both opposite ends of the spectrum, both very radical in their own respects. Shaming men because they said they built.
You're so lucky you've been caught up in the discourse. It's been the worst discourse I've ever seen. Everyone is retarded on both sides.
Both opposite ends of the spectrum, both very radical in their own respects. Shaming men because they said they built a desire, or they felt their desire for children increased after watching a piece of media involving parenting. Don't people watch movies and get that exact same experience? Or read a book, watch a piece of anything, art doesn't matter. It's a normal experience. But here we have this fucking goofball going, I've never looked inside a stroller out of curiosity. Maybe because we spend so much time demonizing men, saying that if they're around kids, they're probably doing something
Where people have babies and they ask me if I told them, I'm like, no, it's your baby, man. Like, I don't want to be responsible for all that. That's your baby. Now, my baby, I peek at her all the time.
That's because we're not socialized to learn.
Does he have a kid? What? I don't know. I don't know, bro.
We're not trusted with kids from a young age, and so obviously we don't want to take on. I feel the exact same way. What Tim described, I understand. I don't feel that way anymore.
Even when you have a kid, you can't hold somebody else's baby?
He's pretty much changed a lot of things, but that's because I had constant exposure. Living with her, initially, if you ask anybody, I didn't even talk to the kid. She'll look at me like, it's a problem. And then slowly our relationship changed because she kept opening my door and just staring at me. I'm like, you look like a devil baby, just serial killer type horror. Just. And it was that for about a year. Eventually we started talking, she come in the room, we talk. We started getting closer, and then I started feeling things I didn't feel before. And it really started to change in my head. And she was teaching me things about myself. Parts of myself I didn't know even existed. And that developed.
I'm sorry. School of Rock flashback.
That's from exposure. I promise you, you grew around kids.
Kidding. It's not. I know it doesn't that way.
From like, but your 20s and you're around you build a certain attachment to them that changes you. And then you start to feel that towards other kids. So Tim said, I don't want to hold that kid. I get it.
I'm sorry. I'm just. My brain is just.
But Tim, you stay inside every day live stream. You didn't even have a relationship ready to go for you until you was like late 30s. You didn't really spend time with family. Why? Because you had to go shop for beans. So I can understand you don't feel comfortable holding a kid. That doesn't mean that we don't have it in us. You're just not given an opportunity to learn safely.
I've had this happen to me on an airplane before. I don't really say anything about it. A guy was on a plane. He was next to, I think it was 2 kids, or it was like 1 kid. And the flight attendant came up and said, we're going to ask you to move seats. And he said, is there a problem? They were like, well, it's just, we don't sit men next to children. And they're like, we would rather a woman sit next to a child.
No shot did this ever fucking happen. I do not believe this. No shot did this ever fucking happen. No shot.
Move seats. A guy was on a plane. He was next to, I think it was 2 kids, or it was like 1 kid. And the flight attendant came up and said, we're going to ask you to move seats. And he said, is there a problem? They're like, well, it's just, we don't sit men next to children. And they're like, we would rather a woman sit next to a child. As if to imply men are dangerous. This is what offends people.
What does that have to do with you saying that? Well, they don't let men sit next to. What does that have to do with the feeling that you want to nurture? What's the link? It's two separate things. Men don't want to nurture. They want to nurture because they're.
Wait, it doesn't just make it worse. I thought Tim was just fucking ignorant. Seems like the guy's aware of the perception of dudes. And then at the same time, he's defending his coworker and what the goofy shit she said.
Yes.
Your coworker's literally contributing to that exact same sentiment that makes dudes wary.
Yes.
And makes people wary.
Yes.
No, this is why dudes are actually like brain dead.
Yes, they are. And he said that and Casper friendly goes. It's like whatever, man.
Gamers are a bunch of them virgins who hate women with the idea of having families that shows are upset. Oh, that's why they're mad. Oh, I was wondering where the new wave of losers was coming from.
That makes sense. It's because I recently said you're never gonna get. So why are you worried about whether or not women's biological clock is ticking? You got posted in a lot of gamer subreddits. Ooh, nice. You're pragmatic, take pissed off incels. You offended the pedos and the capital G gamers and the incels. Yeah, what they're offended by.
Why does he think
primarily is-
gamers are incels? What the fuck?
It's the same thing. It's always the same thing. Well, you know what? You're a dirty socialist terrorist who's here to make sure that women don't reproduce because you want the West to die. There we go. We do the same fucking dumb smears.
The truth. That's what offends them the most. When they hear the truth.
What truth? Like, how's this guy political streamer to be like taking serious? And he says this goofy ass shit. What's the truth? That gamers don't fuck, but gamers don't have any, so whatever it is. Like, with how mainstream gaming is, what does that even mean? Fucking women play games too. I don't understand. Okay, so I'm not the male audience. Let's say just males. I'm gonna be terrible. It's just so stupid. I think
Yeah, I actually want to know more about that airplane shit now. I would do that. If I get sat next to some good family and then like a 3-year-old just like raise my hand and be like, flight attendant? I am a file. I need you to fucking move me. I don't want to be next to this kid for the 6 hour flight to California. Get me the fuck out of here, okay?
I think she's suffering from what people do when it comes to emotions and gender differences. People think that what they see on the surface or what they see out in the open is a reflection of the experience of people gender speaking. We thought that because men didn't express emotions the way women do, which women are very expressive, that men don't feel emotions as much. And studies have shown time after time that men are quite emotional. They just don't showcase them outwardly. But put men in positions where they're supposed to nurture, and all of a sudden you see it with fucking dudes and pets.
Oh, and by the way, if you play the God of War Ragnarok, you're a predator. You're a huge predator. Damn, how you gonna go around and feel something about that little boy? Yeah, so predator. That it was interesting to see both sides engaging a lot of this misogyny. The conservatives have basically saying like, you want kids, and it's not your own kids, you're probably a predator. And it's on the other side, you guys are creepy fucking losers who no one wants to reproduce with. I personally do wish that a lot of this bad rap around dudes in regards to because that all wasn't as fun, because it makes it so there's no opportunities for a lot of you guys to be around kids at a young age, which yeah, I don't think that's a good thing. Then they develop later on in life and don't really have any attachment to kids, so they don't spend time around them because they're socialized not to. And afterwards they're all creepy for not like wanting to hold a kid or not wanting to be around them. It's like, oh shit. So yeah, I'm not surprised that men don't develop these feelings until their 30s. It's not surprising at all. Unfortunately, we're still playing catch up. We're still playing with people who still believe that dudes don't feel emotions, this motherfucking retarded shit. And it's like at some point I hope we can move past a lot of the stupid stereotypes that exist because we can't have the other discussions that should come after that. And I also say women shouldn't even want to uphold these stereotypes either because it pigeonholes women into this conservative idea of being the only ones capable of being caregivers. So well, if you think men are so retarded and men are incapable of being nurturing or whatever it is, then shit, you kind of just justify the whole area where women should have most of the maternal role and most of the nurturing role because men are incapable. So you're literally actually upholding patriarchal standards for Hassan in this case, and then for Tim you guys are dissuading men from being involved with children and actually learning a lot of skills that they might need for their future parental roles.
How was sudden end? Jesus.
I don't think wanting to be a dad is weird. Oh my god, do you guys not have any other fucking content? Jesus Christ, get off my dick, bro. Holy shit. How many more years of this like reluctantly
cyber stalking? Call it cyber stalking. Whenever anybody talks about you, remember it's always cyber stalking, guys. Cyber stalking. Please, God, call it cyber stalking.
Attacking Hassan and then agreeing with his fucking primary focus reluctantly 2 years after the fact? Are we gonna do over and over again? No, they're not. I just don't understand. I don't understand. I don't think it's weird to want to be a dad, man. I'm talking shit about gamers, okay? Capital G gamers. Who are like weirdo fucking white supremacist incels who are like, yeah, this game's gonna repopulate the planet.
We're gonna get. So why are you worried about whether or not women's biological clock is ticking?
Watch any gaming event, though. Where'd you see the neo-Nazi shit? It's like UFC. What the fuck? This guy needs to be hammered in the fucking head. Fuck this guy.
Yeah, what they're offended by, I think, primarily is.
I love how first it started with gamers and now just incels and.
Yeah, dude, you got me. I was actually fucking attacking every gamer on the planet. Like, man, this is low budget bullshit. I don't even want to fucking entertain it. Okay. Again, I can't explain this to you guys enough. I got fucking government ops. Okay. I got the entire propaganda apparatus of the nation state of Israel inside of my fucking asshole.
Hassan would himself, if he had to deal with like real pushback online without an entire community dedicated to like slap sucking him off, dude, he would actually kill himself. If he had to deal with like 1/10 the shit that an actual person who is like mass hated online, he would 1,000,000%.
I got like 55 different articles being written about me on a daily fucking basis on Fox News. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna have to. I don't want to have a back and forth with Abbott and fucking preach.
Also, it's so funny, like Hassan in interviews, I seek out the conflict. I like it when I'm being hated on. Hassan on stream, somebody else made a mean tweet about me and I can't, and then I made a video and I just cyber stalking the nation state of Israel. I think it's a Mossad op. I think they're actually the Mossad.
No!
Okay, over what they misunderstood about my take. Where it's like, oh, I guess he's backtracking to incels now. Yeah, I am, dude. You fucking caught me. I got so embarrassed that I was shitting on every gamer, every man actually, every man that wants to be a father. I was shitting on them, and you caught me because you're fucking brilliant. God forbid you misunderstood the original take that I was making. God forbid. That's never a perspective.
No, you
guys,
think gamers are incels.
No one on the internet ever does this.
Yeah,
like, hold on,
you said.
let me see what he means. No, I've already been established as a fucking villain for a lot of these dudes. Okay, for a lot of these dudes, and it does so well.
I wonder why gamers don't like you.
Go, yeah, I'm a professional misunderstander of the point that he's making. God forbid you fucking agree with me. You only agree with me. Maybe
nobody is. You just called a bunch of gamers incels and white supremacists when we're clearly fucking not. It's like most trans accepting community, you fucking idiot. Oh, and then you. Jesus Christ.
web.
Scream. O-M. My words. Sound Council. Did I get bomb yet? I think I have. You suck. Bomb. Justice. Oh my. That hit was so bad. Gonna force this final drop. I'm super short. Let's do one. Go Insta Max. No, don't. Little revive. Nade fell. What the fuck are you doing? A max bomb. Just gone into times 2 there. Nice, nice, nice. Oh my... I can't stand this game.
Cannot ever readjust their preconceived notions of other cultures, and so better to just feed them the same pig feed over and over again, lest they, somehow riot over how confused they are. And of course, this creates a vicious circle of ignorance. I know many fellow Easterners who, get frustrated whenever Westerners just assume that we all live in deserts and have camels and everything. But my thing is, well, how can you blame those Westerners when that's all they've been given over and over again, the same repetitive pig feed of Orientalism? I can't really bring myself to blame most of them because of that. Of course, when we use the term the East, the definition can be very large and nebulous. Historically, you have had Orientalism for China, for Japan.
No, I got the max first drop, then bomb, then instant, and times 2 as well.
Classical expression, the bulk of it, if you will, which is concerned with MENA, the Middle East, North Africa, the Near East, etc. Now, what is Orientalist music? Orientalist music.
It's the first time I've actually died like that.
A style or styles of music devised by Western composers, used in Western media to represent the East for Western audiences. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, could you give us some examples of instances of Orientalist music in Western media? And that question's premise is flawed. The question rather should be, could you give us examples of Western media that do not utilize Orientalist music? And I would have as hard of a time as finding instances of snowfall in the Sahara Desert. Now, I'm sure snowfall does occur here and there in the Sahara Desert, but you kind of get my point. Orientalist music is not an instance in Western media that happens from here to there. It's not even the statistical majority of representations of Eastern music in Western media. It is the absolutely near total exclusive form of representation of Eastern music in Western media. Let me make this very clear. If you think you have an idea of Middle Eastern music in your mind, but you've never heard anything outside of Western media, then we can confidently guess with almost complete certainty that you have most probably never heard 1 second of actual Middle Eastern music in your entire life. Yes, it is this bad. You can name me any soundtrack, any film, any documentary, and I can guarantee you it is going to be Orientalist, except for very, very minor exceptions that I'm actually going to mention in this video. What about the Medieval 2 soundtrack with the Eastern civilizations, Orientalist? What about the Gladiator soundtrack when they're in Morocco, Orientalist? What about the Prince of Persia soundtrack, Orientalist? What about this movie, Orientalist? Orientalist. 4 main principles define Orientalist music. The first of those is that Orientalist music is completely distinct from actual Middle Eastern music. This is important. Orientalist music is not European-flavored Middle Eastern music. It's not Western composers learning Middle Eastern music and adding their own twist to it. It is Western composers not bothering at all whatsoever to learn anything about Middle Eastern music theory, creating music completely within the bounds of the Western musical framework. The moment a Western musician actually learns Middle Eastern music theory and writes music using those parameters, then by definition it ceases to be Orientalist music. The second principle is that Orientalist music is the illusion of a Middle Eastern sound to an audience that doesn't know any better by composers who achieve that through a series of quick, easily achieved stereotypes that doesn't require them to actually commit to learning actual Middle Eastern music theory. The third of those principles is the hodgepodge effect. Within Orientalist music, instruments, sounds, languages are not placed within their proper anthropological and cultural and ethnic context, but instead they're used in a haphazard manner. You'll have pieces of music in Orientalist music that bear the term Persian, but they'll have Indian instruments and Armenian instruments and Arabic lyrics thrown together. It's just one big Oriental mush that you just put together to create some vaguely Eastern sounding thing. And the last of those is treating the East not as a tangible anthropological reality, but rather as an intangible, abstract, exotic other. See, within the logic of Orientalism, when somebody says, I'm going to write Persian music or Persian themed music, By that, they don't mean I'm going to literally write music about the literal Persians. They're not using the term Persian as an actual anthropological signifier of the Iranic peoples of the Iranian plateau from southwestern Iran. An Orientalist composer, when they say that I'm going to write Persian music, Persian means cobra dancing over the desert sands as the camels go through the sunset, and a seductress is, belly dancing with the veils over her eyes as, the night falls and the sands blow. But this is the logic of Orientalism. Orientalism isn't actually about being interested in the actual Middle East. It's about being interested in a vibe, a vague vibe
Oh,
that really only exists
yeah,
in
blah,
Western
blah, blah,
culture.
blah, blah,
It
blah.
hasn't actually ever really existed in the actual Middle East. Now, whenever I make new Epic Talking videos, I will end up gaining new viewers who don't know my channel, and so some may ask, well, here you are criticizing musicians that are foreign to a certain culture for inauthentically representing said culture, and yet I'm browsing your channel, and here you are representing the music of so many other cultures, so how are you any better? And that's a pretty fair question to ask. Who I am is somebody who has built a channel entirely off of the back of thorough ethnomusicological research and historically informed musical practices. This is not something that's very hard for me to corroborate. You can click on virtually any one of my videos on this channel and go to the pinned comment, and you will find detailed, thorough explanations on why the musical, instrumental, vocal, etc. choices have been made, why they're rooted in a certain ethnomusicological factor, and why they're representative either historically or ethnomusicologically. And perhaps most importantly, I work
No,
with
it's
people
just
from those
really
traditions.
last
I'm
one.
confident in saying that my Balkanic music is authentic because I work on them with Balkanic musicians who let me know if we don't exactly do this or we do that, to the point where many arrangements of Balkanic music that I've arranged have been featured in cultural events by Balkaners themselves on the basis that they were authentic enough, that they're good enough for their own native cultural events. Twice in a row, the Natale di Roma, the birthday celebrations of the city of Rome, have featured my either historically informed reconstructions of ancient Roman music or my ancient Roman themed music that uses Roman instruments, like in front of the Colosseum with the Pantheon and everything. Again, because I work closely with the sources, with the data, and most importantly, with people from those traditions or experts of those traditions. Is the nature of my authenticity perfect on every single minute level? Probably not. But at least I can use the correct instruments for the correct culture. That much cannot even be said for Orientalist music. And here I am speaking on Middle Eastern music, as a Middle Eastern musician from a long line of Middle Eastern musicians myself. So I believe that in this regard, I am not exceedingly arrogant in this enterprise. I do think I have some level of being well placed to speak on this subject. Third and final disclaimer, whenever I make videos in which I talk about how a certain style of music is not authentic to a time or place, the fans of these styles of music, or some of them at least, take it as a personal attack, and their interpretation of my video is, therefore you're saying we shouldn't enjoy this style of music, that we should feel bad for listening to it. You'll have a hard time finding anyone who enjoys Orientalist music more than I do, especially the old Lawrence of Arabia kind of classic Hollywood sound. I absolutely adore it. Now, while it's undeniable that Orientalist music is fundamentally rooted in the ignorance of Western musicians who don't bother actually putting in the work to understand Middle Eastern music theory, and that it's really nothing more than a bunch of lazy cliches and stereotypes, it still creates a unique sound of its own, and I enjoy that sound for what it is on its own merits. My point here is not to get anyone to stop listening to Orientalist music. I just want people to understand that whilst they may think that they've been listening to Middle Eastern music, they actually haven't been. They've been listening to something completely different. Similarly, I will be very openly critical of some YouTube channels who create Orientalist music, but I'm not criticizing them because their music is Orientalist. I am going to be critical of these channels because they have not properly explained what their music is about. You see, you have this channel, for example, that creates music called Ancient Arabian Music, but their music is software-based. It doesn't use any real instruments. It uses softwares that emulate the sound of instruments, and the instruments that they're using are neither ancient nor Arabian. They're using tars that are Iranian and santurs that are Iranian and Armenian duduks, and throwing them all together. They're not even using them using Middle Eastern music theory or the Middle Eastern musical language, and they just call it Ancient Arabian music and don't offer any context beyond that. Well, the average person is going to look at that and say, okay, that's what Ancient Arabian music sounded like. The most popular examples of Middle Eastern and Arabic music on the internet, if you type Arabian and Middle Eastern music on the internet, the first results you're going to get are from this channel. A collection of music by two Westerners who don't know a single thing about Middle Eastern music theory, who use second-rate software instead of actual real Middle Eastern instruments, mixing Iranian and Indian and Armenian instruments in their supposedly Arabic music, and they call it Arabic and Middle Eastern music. I'm not criticizing them for having created Orientalist music. I'm criticizing them for not having promoted it as Orientalist music. I'm advocating for the idea that Orientalism should be an option available to composers. However, as we have established previously, it's not an option. Historically, Orientalist music has been the exclusive norm in Western media. I'm not critical of the existence of Orientalism, nor do I wish for its eradication. All I'm advocating for is that in a normal world, a balance of often having actual Middle Eastern music implemented in representations of the Middle East, and from time to time, if composers for a specific aesthetic decide that Orientalism would better serve that purpose, I don't think that's too radical a stance. I have no problem with people listening to Orientalist music and enjoying it on the basis of its artistry. I do have a problem when thousands upon thousands, if not millions of people, as evidence in the comments of these YouTube videos, listen to Orientalist music, thanking those composers for having given them a glimpse of the actual real musical tradition of the Middle East. The duduk. The duduk has developed a fetishistic obsession on the parts of Western composers and video game composers of Hollywood and everything when it comes to any soundtrack that has anything to do remotely with MENA or the Middle East. You have documentaries about Morocco and it'll use the duduk. You'll have shots of Arabic countries and it'll use the duduk for some reason.
What
I just need you
the
to understand how literal I am being. I'm not
fuck are
exaggerating.
you doing
Literally
outside your
every
cage?
single Western film that is remotely connected to the East uses the duduk. I mean, literally. I'm not kidding. You can listen to any soundtrack. They all use the duduk, literally, systematically. It is obsessive on the parts of Western composers. Absolutely obsessive. The duduk is an Armenian instrument, and its geographical usage was always very, very limited. It bled over the direct geographical neighbors of that region, so it's pretty much always been limited to the Caucasus, the Armenian highlands, Azerbaijan, and, you know, the Eastern Anatolians. That's pretty much it when it comes to the geographical spread of the duduk. But because of the fetishistic, systematic usage of the duduk in Orientalist music and Western media, people now have gotten this idea that this is the great, ultimate Oriental instrument. You want to make music about Iran, use the duduk. And it's just very weird to hear people call it the Arabic instrument when not a single one of the Arab cultures uses it. Not a single one. It used to be that the orchestral ensemble with, you know, the double harmonic major and everything was what Orientalist music was mostly about. Orientalism shifted towards using actual instruments from the Eastern modal traditions, but using them in a haphazard way that is not at all representative of their actual ethnic and cultural and national associations. So modern Orientalist music will use Indian instruments for Arabic countries and an Armenian instrument for Moroccan music.
My signal. Unleash hell. This movie moves around a little bit geographically. What I wanted to do is, once we're in Morocco, I wanted it to be really tribal, dirty, gritty. I always wanted to use this one instrument for the Moroccan sequences called the duduk, which is thousands of years old. It's really an Armenian clarinet would be the easiest explanation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Morocco, you say Morocco, I think Armenian instrument. Yeah, 100%. You know, Armenia, Caucasus, Asia, therefore, you know, 6,000 kilometers away from there, at the edge of Africa, in another continent. Oh my God, Faria, you just being so pedantic and like you just being such a snowflake. Like it still fits. Like it's still appropriate. Like it's, you know, it's still Eastern. Like it's still, you know, like you know, you people, like it's still, you know, browns. That's kind of the entire point of the thing. Yeah, in this movie, for the scenes that are set in Paris, I've used the sound of a Cretan Madura. What the fuck? This is so weird. Why are you doing this? It's so jarring. Why are you doing this? This doesn't sound right. This doesn't sound Parisian. Oh my God, you're overreacting so much. Okay, it's still a European instrument. It still fits. It's still completely appropriate. You're still in Europe. They're all white. You know, it's all really the same thing. It's just Europe. Like, how much of a difference is there between a Scottish person and a Sicilian person? It's literally all the same at the end, isn't it? I don't want to shit too much on Hans Zimmer. I'm happy he used the duduk for that section of the movie. However, I have to recognize, with pure honesty, despite the fact that I'm the biggest fanboy of this soundtrack, it is my favorite film soundtrack of all time, probably. I just have to recognize that, anthropologically speaking, it is quite funny and absurd to hear the duduk in Morocco. And the hard truth and the hard pill to swallow, I think, for a lot of people, is that if Western audiences knew just as much about Morocco and Armenia as they did Scotland, Hans Zimmer would not be able to get away with this, because he certainly would never be able to get away with this. This is unimaginable in Western media. Orientalism is all about getting away with the generalized ignorance that Western audiences in general have towards the Eastern civilization. See, they're not sufficiently familiar enough with the musical cultures of the Middle East to be able to place a certain instrument within its proper anthropological context. Let me give you an example. If I play this instrument, the average Western person, however musically illiterate, will be able to tell you that, well, this is an older kind of instrument. It sounds kind of royal and palacey, and I imagine aristocrats dancing to this. And it's definitely not a hillbilly instrument used by Appalachian rednecks, stereotypically. But if I start using the banjo, on the other hand, the average Westerner is able to tell that this is clearly not some royal instrument used by the ancient royalty of Europe. This is the banjo. It's like a folk American thing. However, on the other hand, I'll play this instrument. The average Westerner who doesn't know anything about the Eastern modal traditions, they can't tell whether this is Iranian or Turkish or Armenian or all of them, whether this is a low-class, folkish villager instrument or whether this is a more high-class instrument, whether it's liturgical or not. So, for example, with this piece of music, Faulan, Princess of Persia, these percussions are completely out of place because they lean very much towards a geographically Southeast Asian usage. Different regions have their own percussions that have their own color and sound that defines the characteristic sound of said cultures. For example, for Persian music or Iranian music at large, you want to use a tombak or a daf. These are the main two percussions that we use, especially the daf and the tombak. The daf and the tombak sound completely different from these percussions. As somebody from the region, hearing these Southeast Asian leaning percussions over supposedly Iranian music is equivalent to hearing this over something that is supposed to have a Scottish theme. It's just completely jarring. If you want an Arabic or Greek or Turkish sound, the darbuka drum is what you'd most probably use. That is the most commonly used type of instrument there. And for Southeast Asians, it's that kind of sound. But this kind of sound automatically screams India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, the Desi cultures, rather than actual Middle Eastern cultures, certainly not the Persian culture.
Big ups Bangladesh.
And then, of course, the duduk. We can't go without the duduk. The duduk is the one. It is the main one. That is the obsessive one. Then you have this comment that the musicians themselves wrote, which is, "Dear community, we are very happy that so many people like this song. It means a lot to us that the song seems to touch the depth of the soul of many people. That is exactly what we want to achieve with our songs. Touch the heart and take you into another world." We read attentively every comment and apologize to all Persian people that we called the song Princess of Persia, although it belongs more to Arabic music. To be honest, we don't write music according to a certain style of music, but we let ourselves be driven by our thoughts. That's how the song was created. Yeah, and that's exactly my point about Orientalist music. Orientalist music is not driven by any research or emulation of cultures or anthropological reality. It's Westerners who don't really know anything about the Middle East and Middle Eastern cultures, and they just heard certain instruments in Hollywood films, and they associate that with a vibe, and they're just going with, I just wanted a vibe of the desert. What's really funny is, in this mea culpa, then they're writing, although it belongs more to Arabic music. No, it doesn't even belong to Arabic music. This is not Arabic music. It has Southeast Asian percussions. It has a duduk, even when they're trying to correct themselves. They show that no anthropological awareness or knowledge whatsoever. Santur. The santur is principally used in Iran. It is really an Iranian instrument. Even countries that use the santur, such as Turkey, such as Indians also have a different kind of santur. The Greeks also saduri. They have a different type of saduri. But even those countries agree that the santur has a central place in Iranian music that no other musical tradition confers that to it. The most un-Arabic instrument you could imagine is the santur. Hearing a santur over a title that says ancient Arabian music, it would feel like this to a Westerner.
Got me a woman in Cumberland Gap. Got me a woman in Cumberland Gap. Got me a woman in Cumberland Gap. She got a boy, calls me Pap.
I just absolutely adore this one. Do you hear it? That's like a tapura kind of instrument. I don't know. It's clearly a digital VST, but it is emulating some sort of this kind of buzzing kind of instrument sound. This is Southeast Asian. Okay, this is Indian. Iranians, we don't have anything that sounds like this. I mean, the Arabs, for God's sake, how ignorant can you be of Arabic music? It's like this.
Got me a woman in Cumberland Gap. Got me a woman in Cumberland Gap.
Another example would be the Crusader Kings 3 Legacy of Persia soundtrack. It begins as just generic Orientalist music. Duduk. We're not even 8 seconds into the fucking song, and there's a duduk already.
Mr. Hollywood composer, your son was boiled alive, and your wife died of grief. Your entire city burned down. Also, you can't use the duduk for your next soundtrack in the Middle East.
Yeah, and then you have these, the desert vocals. Again, double harmonic major or Phrygian dominant, one of those two. They're almost the same mode. And the vocal style is very tense, very high-pitched and nasal, which is very much unlike Persian classical vocals. Persian classical vocals are defined almost in contrast to Arabic classical vocals in that they are very much held back. They don't use a very tense vocal texture. If anything, it's a very relaxed, warm vocal texture. And you never sort of, bring out the voice completely. You never let it explode out. It's always held back a little bit.
العوالي عن مالينا واستشهد البيضة الخبر جفينا
پیرده وز ده مامم شراب من خونه یزی
جدك الغيث إذا الغيث حما يا زمان الوصل بالأندلسي طلال والخلق يرزقني اللهم صل على المصطفى yazmayı da sarıya mı boyadı başındaki yazmayı da sarıya mı boyadı Snavivada Ravazelena Snavivada aman aman Ravazelena
ستاره آسمون نقش زمینه وای خدا من گشتر و یارم نگینه
This vocal style is not something that is representative of how we sing in Iran. One of those musicians made a piece of music called At the Gates of Babylon, epic Persian music, and then he remasters it, the exact same song, still called At the Gates of Babylon, but this time it's epic Arabian music. It's the exact same song. It's like on display. The guy just doesn't, they're all the same. Persians are Arabs, their music sounds the same. Persian Egyptian music, yeah, one of my favorite genres. I also love Estonian Scottish music and Danish Greek music, also some of my favorite music. The guy doesn't use Persian and Egyptian literally. The title is literally someone going, Persian Egyptian, two words that kind of vaguely mean Eastern, Oriental, whatever, Egyptian, Persian, you get it. It's the equivalent of me making a weird mishmash of like flamenco vocals with Scottish music and calling it Belgian Lithuanian music with the implicit semiotic gesture that, you know what I mean, you know, Belgian Lithuanian, you get it, you know what I mean, those people. The fucking, you know, Europe, the whites, you know, Eiffel Tower, those people, Belgian Lithuanian, whatever, you get the vibe. Ancient Egyptian music / Persian music, Desert Duduk. Short Arabian inspired track by me. My dude, ancient Egypt isn't Arabian. Persian isn't Arabian. And the Duduk isn't Arabian. Literally everything about this makes no fucking sense. Within Orientalism, whenever somebody uses the term Scottish, they mean it literally, as in literally anthropologically the Scots. If they use the term Russian or if they use the term Greek, they mean it in a literal manner. But Orientalists, the way they use Egyptian and Persian, they don't mean it in a literal anthropological sense, they mean it in a vague signifier of a vibe.
As the title indicates, this song is a desert, Arabic, Persian themed song.
Yeah, there's a piece of music I wrote in a French, Hungarian, temperate climate themed kind of music. Yeah, desert themed music. Alpine climate music also, alpine climate. Whew, big fan. Do you see how absurd this kind of approach becomes the moment you try to apply it to Europe? Suddenly, the almost offensive levels of generalization and ignorance come to the surface.
There is something a little bit disturbing, I think, about somebody from that region, myself, as an Iranian myself, to see that terms associated with my identity are reduced to nothing more than a bunch of vague vibes to denote simplistic stereotypes and cliches in the minds of outsiders.
The very first epic talking video that I made, Are Iranian and Arabic Music the Same?, was mainly about the mixed race effect. Now, the mixed race effect is the psychological phenomenon wherein, as human beings, when we've interacted a lot with a category, we have an easy time distinguishing the individual members of that category apart from one another. But the moment we start looking at another category that we're not familiar with, we initially kind of mix them all together, the individual elements, and we have a hard time telling them apart. This inherent psychological limitation of human beings partially explains why Chinese people, for example, who have not spent a lot of time looking at white phenotypes, will tell you all white people kind of look alike. But the moment you tell them all Asians look alike, they go, are you crazy? Or it's why, for example, people who speak Slavic languages will tell you with utter confidence that Russian and Polish sound completely different from one another. But somebody who really doesn't know anything about Slavic languages and who hasn't heard many of them, most of them will tend to tell you, I don't know, like to me, Polish and Russian sound the exact same and I cannot tell them apart for the life of me. This psychological limitation is more than natural to human beings. It is inherent to who we are. And it's perfectly normal that the collective consciousness of the West has that in regards to the East. Of course, the West will be more intimately familiar with its own direct neighbors and cultural relatives. This is why to most Westerners, if I say, are Polish and Spanish cultures different? They're like, what do you mean they're different? Of course, they're nothing alike. It's almost like on a gut level, you feel that they're different. But the moment I tell them, how about Iranian and Arab? Suddenly they have a hard time and they often can't tell them apart, again, unless they've actually interacted and studied those cultures. Now, what happens when you put the representation of the Orient into the hands of people who have that inherent limitation, who haven't looked a lot at the East and therefore perceive the East as one interchangeable mush? You're going to get a representation of the East that's one interchangeable mush, and you're going to get people going, whatever, Duduk fits in Morocco, it's all the same anyway.
I personally cannot for the life of me tell Chinese and Japanese architecture apart from one another. I look at them and I'm like, as far as I'm concerned, they're the exact same thing. However, I am cognizant of the fact that if I spend more time looking at that architecture and studying it, I will be able to tell that they are as individually distinct from one another as German architecture is distinct from French architecture, a distinction that I can very easily make because I have spent more time looking at European architecture. Having the mixed race effect is perfectly fine. That makes us human. But dismissing other cultures on the basis that I can't tell the difference, therefore you are overreacting, that's not being human. That's being a fucking cunt. Orientalism thrives on and is literally fueled, exists solely and primarily due to the generalized ignorance of mass audiences regarding foreign cultures. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to write a piece of music in an Orientalistic manner. So the first thing that I'm going to do is that I'm going to make a piece of music about the ancient Persian Empire. And so I want that Persian sound. So I'm going to use an instrument that like sounds Eastern. It has that like Eastern, like, you know, like that, you know, Middle Eastern, like Arabic kind of thing, because it's the Persian Empire. So we want that kind of Arabic sound. Oh yeah, that's good. It has like that Arabic like thing. That has like, that sounds Persian. There's this thing, like this instrument. It's like that the Middle Eastern like desert thing, like in all the movies. It's called the duduk. Like that is so Persian, desert, because that's the thing. I want to make a piece of music about. I want to make a Persian piece of music, and Persian music is about getting like that Arab, you know, like desert kind of vibe, you know, like that. Like you want that vibe, you know, the camel, you know, the Allahu Akbar tribal, you know, primitive. That's it. We've got Persian music in our hands, guys.
The Allahu Akbar.
I am going to write a piece of music that is supposedly going to be European in nature with the same kind of method that Orientalist Western musicians use for Middle Eastern cultures. So we are going to make a piece of music called William Wallace Epic Scottish Battle Music. I want that Scottish vibe, you know, that European vibe, you know what I mean? This instrument, I want that instrument too, because we want like that authentic, you know, like Western kind of feel. So we're gonna use this one. I hear that instrument, and I think of like Scotland and everything.
Oh
and then
my
for the vocals, I want that
God.
vocal style, you know, that like the Europeans use in their music. This one. This. Opera, whatever, I don't fucking care. Like that vocal style is gonna give us that Western. Oh, and then this instrument, the Western instrument, this one. Hear this and you're like, William Wallace, yeah. And then I want that way of singing that they have, like the Europeans, what are they called? The alcoholics, the vodka people, whatever, they're all fucking Europeans anyway, it doesn't really matter. Europeans have this style of singing.
Ah, last spawn! The last spawn! I recovered in the last spawn! What the fuck was that? Oh my goodness. It was so delayed.
I hope that this has been a fruitful exercise in empathy. I understand, I sympathize with the fact that if you're not a Middle Easterner and you listen to Orientalist music, you might be thinking to yourself, I don't know, it works fine for me, it's not like this absurd, jarring thing. Well, yeah, it isn't, because you don't have the empirical knowledge required in order to have the perceptual experience that actual Easterners have. But I need you to understand, this William Wallace example that I created is not an exaggeration, it is literally how Orientalist music sounds like to us. That same level of completely nonsensical mixing of cultures and everything is
not internet until 23.
And this opens up an interesting philosophical notion. You're dealing with a form of artistic expression that works for everybody except the people that it represents. A form of art that is jarring
That's so
only
stupid.
to the people that it represents. Food for thought. First and foremost, among all the features of Orientalist music, its beating heart, the beating drum at the core of all of it, the main crutch of Orientalist music is the over-reliance on the double fucking harmonic major. It's very recognizable, and it is the go-to series of notes to refer to the East and to the Orient in the minds of people. In order to understand why it's such a stereotype, we have to understand the nature of the Eastern modal traditions. We call these traditions the Eastern modal traditions because modality and the usage of modes is their primary factor. Okay, so I'm not going to go into too much detail of what a mode is. I will tell you to go watch this video in which I explain in more detail what modes are. Basically, to keep it very simple for this video, a mode is a specific configuration of notes. If you look at a piano and you use this specific configuration, this specific selection of notes, it gives you the major. This specific configuration, the minor Dorian. This specific configuration, the minor Aeolian. And then by the end of the Middle Ages, you have the rise of the harmonic minor, and you have a few others, but for the most part, European music, in its mainstream, was limited to minor, major, and, you know, like 2 or 3 others, so upwards of 5, basically, at most. Again, in the mainstream, I know there have been experimentals, I know about Harry Parch and everything. We're talking about mainstream generalities of Western music for most of its history. On the other hand, the Eastern modal traditions are all about having, in each tradition, 30 modes, 40 modes, 50 modes. That's why they're called the Eastern modal traditions, because it's having so many modes that is the little defining trait. This is helped, of course, by the fact that we have more notes than Westerners do. Westerners, since the Middle Ages, have divided the octave in 12 parts. They've spliced the octave into 12 notes. We splice it into more than 12 notes, at least 24. That's what we call microtonality. So the moment you have more notes, this exponentially expands the
Double max, both horrible in higher rounds and in classrooms.
The great strength of Middle Eastern music, its greatest quality, its greatest achievement, the
Completely
thing that
different
makes it what it
reasons.
is the fact that it has so many modes, such a diversity of modes, from Rast
What?
to Bayard,
Oh my
all these
God!
different modes. Some of them
Water down.
Westerners can't even play them.
I'm about to rip.
Without proper training, because these are notes that literally do not exist in Western music
Rip.
theory.
I'm gonna rip the Treyarch out. Come on. That's so annoying.
This tetrachord, which is the basis for a mode called Hijaz and its close parent Hijazkar. You also have the Phrygian.
I just did it again. I did it again. I never made these mistakes.
Phrygian and Hijazkar are 2 modes that have become the go-to representatives of the East in Orientalist music. Orientalist music has a fetishistic obsession with this Hijaz tetrachord and with the Phrygian mode. Orientalist music is defined by the fact that it cannot even conceive of Middle Eastern music beyond the usage of the double harmonic major. The entirety of the vast panoply of so many different modes used by the Eastern modal traditions is boiled down to this one single fucking singular mode of double harmonic major. Hello, Mr. Hollywood/video game music composer. I was sent here to be your consultant on Middle Eastern music. So I just wanted to know, so the first scene for the movie, how does the melody go? I wanted the music to sound Middle Eastern, so the melody goes like this. Okay, interesting choice. Hijaz, yeah, the Hijaz tetrachord, sure. That's a mode that we have. It's heard relatively often in our music. Kind of a specific mode to choose. You know, it's not really a central one, but it is there. We do use it, so sure. How about the next scene, the scene after that, you know, when the hero meets the girl? Okay, Hijaz car again, that's interesting. How about, if I may, I could suggest to you different modes of Middle Eastern music, because as you know, the entire point of Middle Eastern music is that we are the musical tradition with the most modes. Like, that's literally what our musical tradition is about, right? So, for example, you could go for bayat or shur. That is the most widely used traditional mode. It's the minor, but the second note of the minor scale is a half flat, a microtonal half flat, so it goes like this. Hear that sound? It's never heard in Western music, and it gives it a beautiful sound. You can go... I could go like that, but I'd rather go like this. Sure, you can just stick to Hijaz Kar for this one too if you want. Now for the next scene, what would be interesting, I would suggest going for a variant of shur. It gives you a minor flavor, but that's not quite minor, and it's not quite like shur or bayat that we just saw, so it goes like this. You can listen to all their hours of music. It's literally just Phrygian double harmonic major. Literally. They never venture outside of that, even once. Any of those epic Arabic battle music, Arabian battle music, World Music FM, Nancy Martz Kanan, all of them, double harmonic major Phrygian. Harry Gregson Williams, double harmonic Phrygian. Hans Zimmer, double harmonic Phrygian. You name any composer. It's that bad. It's not a case of, oh, it's that bad. Orientalist music can literally not conceive of Western music outside of only those two. It reduces the musical tradition with the largest amount of modes in the combined history of humankind to only two, and really mostly one, which is double harmonic major, and then secondarily the Phrygian mode. You have like 100 others, and you just go for this one over and over again, when you have so many other different sounds and emotions, and why this one mode? We're gonna look at why right now. Orientalist music is written by Westerners who don't know Middle Eastern music theory. If they knew Middle Eastern music theory, then it wouldn't be Orientalist music. And their goal is to create a form of music that automatically sounds exotic and foreign and alien and Eastern to their mainstream Western audience. That's easy to do with the Middle Eastern modes because most of them are microtonal. Microtonality does not exist in Western music theory. Microtonal modes are so alien and unusual from a Western perspective.
New cycle.
Automatically get that foreign, alien, exotic vibe that Orientalism needs. So why don't these Orientalist musicians use microtonality? 3 reasons. The first is that they are Western-trained musicians. And somebody who is exclusively trained in Western music theory doesn't know how to use microtonality. Now, I know a lot of Western-trained musicians who think they understand microtonality, and they're a lot like Italian-Americans who think they're Italians. And whenever they come to us Middle Easterners and try to prove that they understand microtonality, it's like that cringe moment when you see Italian-Americans trying to show to Italians that they're just as Italians as them. Western music theory is literally antithetical to microtonality and its very fundamentals, whereas Middle Eastern music is literally rooted entirely in the usage of microtonality. Second reason is because most Western-trained musicians tend to detest the sound of microtonality. It's so off-putting to them that they don't even want to use it in the first place because it just sounds so bad to their ears. And the third reason is because most Western instruments cannot even accommodate the usage of microtonality. Guitars and everything, for example, do not have enough frets in order for you to be able to play microtonal notes. Basically, it all amounts to they're Western musicians, and because Western music theory is so antithetical to microtonality, well, they're not going to use it because they don't even know how to use it, they don't like the sound of it, and even if they wanted to use it, their instruments do not allow them to use it. So microtonality is out of the picture. It's not a possibility. So what do you do? There are modes in the Middle East that the Westerners also have. See, every mode that exists in Western music also exists in Middle Eastern music theory. We have the major scale, we have the minor scale, we have every scale that exists in Western music theory, we have it in the East too. So why don't they use those? Well, the problem is, because those modes are also used in the West, it's way harder to get them to sound exotic and foreign. In order to make a major scale melody sound foreign and exotic, you really need to know a lot about the accent with which Middle Eastern instruments are played. You need to learn how those instruments are articulated. But again, because they're Western musicians limited to Western music theory, they don't know how to articulate instruments in a Middle Eastern manner, and so even if they try writing modes that Westerners also have, it just ends up sounding like Western music. Somebody who grew up in Eastern modal music theory can easily take a melody in the Dorian minor, something that is as Western as it gets, and make it sound completely Middle Eastern, like Serene Ben Seni, which for the most part is often played in a very, very close analog to the Dorian mode of Western music. This requires effort. It requires an amount of effort to learn those authentic articulations and techniques and to get that sound out. So the modes that are accessible to Westerners, because they're classically Western modes also, are also out of the picture.
Oh.
You're left with Phrygian, and most importantly, the double harmonic major. Double harmonic major and Phrygian are not microtonal modes. Therefore, they're easy to be played on Western instruments, and also, they don't exist in Western music at all. Therefore, the moment you use the double harmonic major tetrachord, even without Eastern instruments, even without any knowledge of their ornaments and techniques and their way of playing, you will automatically get a foreign sound. Simply because they don't have that in the West, therefore it'll automatically sound exotic and foreign and otherworldly. And it has the added advantage of not being microtonal, therefore easily accessible on Western instruments. This is why the double harmonic major and the Phrygian to a secondary extent have become the ultimate crutch without which Orientalist music cannot survive. Because Orientalist music will never dare even try to make an effort to understand the vast, incredibly deep complexity of the Eastern modal traditions. The reason the double harmonic major has become the main pillar of Orientalist music is simply because it is a fast, cheap cheat code that doesn't require any effort whatsoever. I can just go up and down this tetrachord over and over again on a piano without putting in any effort understanding how their instruments are played, the techniques, the ornamentations, the music theory, and it'll already sound...
Is my first drop Insta? So what's my last drop? Insta, I was double drop max, so there you go.
Hollywood soundtracks and Hollywood composers, they write from the Western music theory framework, they completely ignore and can't be bothered to go into actual Middle Eastern music theory, so they stick on these double harmonic major and Phrygian, you know, they mishmash instruments in a nonsensical, stereotypical way. However, one thing can be given to them, they use real instruments at least. Usually they'll get real Armenian duduk players to play melodies that, you know, still end up sounding Orientalist because they constrain those Middle Eastern musicians within a Western musical framework, within Orientalist melodies that are not written the way Eastern melodies will be written, but at least the instruments are real. The same cannot be said, however, for this YouTube Orientalist genre, this whole epic Arabic battle music, Persian battle music, ancient Egyptian duduk kind of music on YouTube that has unfortunately become the dominant form of representation of Eastern music on YouTube. If you type Middle Eastern and Egyptian music on YouTube, the first examples are going to be from Western Orientalists who don't know anything about Middle Eastern music theory. And the worst part is, most of them have never put their hands on an actual Middle Eastern instrument in their lives. Their music, this whole genre, is entirely and completely software-based. You don't need to believe me, they themselves list all the softwares that they've used. This, coupled with their complete disinterest in actually delving into actual Eastern music theory, their reliance on Western music theory, on stereotypes, on cultural mishmash of instruments, explains why their music sounds the way it does. Because a physical instrument allows you to articulate the instrument in many ways, but a software can only go so far. And that's what we're going to look at right now. The problem of articulation, or the lack of articulation, really. Articulation is the way you use a certain instrument. The violin is a great example of that. The violin is one of the most versatile instruments to exist. Depending on how it is played, it can give you a typically Irish sound, or it can give you a typically Middle Eastern sound. Those are the same instrument, but the way that they're articulated confers that ethnic grit to it. And in order to understand articulation with instruments, you have to be used to a certain culture. The way cultures play their instruments creates different effects. This is why the balama, which historically was played by the Greeks for a few centuries before it went out of fashion recently, when the Greeks play the balama, it sounds very different from how the Turks play it. Articulation is an important detail of ethnic authenticity that requires study and familiarity. I was working on a piece of music recently where I asked a musician to record the duduk for me. However, when I asked the musician to play the duduk for me, I said it's an Azerbaijani themed piece of music. And he said, okay, so I will play it with an Azerbaijani accent. This is something that is completely lost on musicians like Antimart Kenan and everything. And the way that they articulate their instruments, they just go up and down
Beautiful
the
grab.
double harmonic major scale.
Not perfect, but beautiful.
If you know anything about actual Middle Eastern music, it's that what defines our way of playing music is primarily the ornamentation. Ornamentation is not even ornament. I dislike the term ornamentation when speaking about Middle Eastern music because our music isn't ornamented. The ornamentation is the music. If you listen to Iranian piano styles of playing music, it sounds a lot more like this. Think of the Baroque era for those who are more familiar with Western music. If you listen to old Baroque recordings, all those ornamentations and everything.
Oh, that was so unnecessary. That was so unnecessary. Come on!
Composers, what they do, they buy those virtual instruments, Middle Eastern instruments, and there's, oh, okay, Middle Eastern sounding
You shouldn't have
instruments.
booted the windows.
Sure. And then they start doing
My
shit
bad,
like this,
last game.
it takes on a completely different dimension of its own. And it's this dimension of articulation that allows Middle Eastern music to sound Middle Eastern even when it's using modes that the Westerners are using. You can use the major fucking scale and make it sound Middle Eastern if you know how to articulate instruments in a Middle Eastern manner.
This YouTube Orientalist genre exclusively uses softwares, no real instruments. This music claims to represent a musical tradition whose primary form of expression is complex articulation, and it produces this music using softwares, a tool that can't even produce basic articulation.
Now the question must be asked, how did the duduk end up becoming the go-to Orientalist instrument to represent all of the Middle East? Well, the reason is simple. This is due to the circular associations of pop culture. Pop culture will develop associations and will refer to those same associations. This is something that is extremely important to understand. Orientalism is never rooted in emulating the actual traditions of the East. Orientalism is rooted in emulating previous incarnations of Orientalism. I would know because I was asked multiple times to compose projects for documentaries or independent video games, small short films, nothing on the scale of Hollywood, obviously, but the same cultural reflexes apply. And whenever I was asked to do that, they would tell me, can you write Iranian music for us? And I'm like, sure. And I delivered them a soundtrack that's actually Iranian. And, the first few times I did this, every time it was like, what is this? That's not what we wanted. I'm like, what do you mean? You wanted Iranian music? That's Iranian music. And they were like, no, that's not Iranian music. That's Iranian music. That's what we wanted. We wanted you to write, Persian soundtrack music. Like, why doesn't it sound like the Prince of Persia soundtrack? Now, whenever somebody asks me to write a supposedly Iranian-themed soundtrack, I actually tell them, first off, I want you to realize that what you probably think, what you're probably asking me to do is not what is actually Iranian music. People have this idea that when Hollywood composers are tasked with writing a soundtrack about a foreign culture, that their first reference is to go out there and study the actual music of those cultures. No. Hollywood soundtracks and video game soundtracks, their first reference is previous soundtracks. Orientalism always refers to previous incarnations of Orientalism. For example, in my previous video where I talked about the duduk and how it is closely related to Rome also in Western media. So the duduk, by the way, in Western media has a dual association of anything desert, ancient, and also for some reason like classical Rome, I think because of Gladiator. And then a lot of people were like, well, I think Hans Zimmer used the duduk because he wanted to emulate the sound of the Greco-Roman aulos. So why didn't he use the aulos? I'm sure that the moment I say that the duduk is used in Kingdom of Heaven and it doesn't actually belong there, somebody's going to be like, well, Kingdom of Heaven features Salahaddin, and Salahaddin was Kurdish, and the Kurds in Eastern Anatolia, they used the duduk. Therefore, this is what brought Harry Gressing Williams to use the duduk. I mean, we are to expect that Hollywood, with its track record of cultural representation, somehow has the most historically informed, ethnomusicologically informed instruments on such a level that they're using these third-level associations that require ethnomusicological knowledge. Bulgarian choirs were used in Troy because the composer thought it sounded ancient and cool and whatever. The duduk is constantly used because that's the Western Media Association. That's all there is to it. I'm sorry to break it to fanboys of Hollywood soundtracks. This is how Orientalism started. How Orientalism started was that somewhere in the 1800s probably, Westerners who were naturally ignorant about a foreign culture began haphazardly representing that culture without truly understanding what it is. And then the next generation of people who want to refer to the East, well, they're immersed in Western culture. So what they have access to is Western representations of the East. So they just refer to that, and on it goes. Western media always refers to previous incarnations of the East in Western media instead of actually breaking that vicious circle and going outside and actually looking at the East. This is why Orientalism has survived to this day.
The times two, I actually have no. I don't know if I've got times two yet.
همون اولین ثانیه‌اشون تنبک واسه تو قشنگ آدم رنگ ایرانی رو حس میکنه. آره یعنی تو مثلا اون قبلی رو فرستاده بودم حس می‌کردیم هر دو تا که این آدم‌ها اصلا هیچ ریشه‌ای ندارن تو موسیقی خود سنتی یا اصلا کلا شرقی مدال یا ایرانی حتی این آدم حس می‌کنه که کاملا از یه بیس ایرانی شروع کرده موسیقیشو بنویسه.
A Westerner wrote and made this.
One of my favorite passages in the Medieval 2 Total War soundtrack by Jeff Van Dyke, one of my favorite composers, somebody who very much, goes for Orientalist stereotypes and tropes, still has this passage. This is
absolutely perfect. This is flawless. You would absolutely hear this in Egyptian classical music, for example. It's some microtonal mode. I don't know exactly what mode it is, but it is definitely microtonal, and it is being played on those portamento strings that give it that very recognizable Middle Eastern string kind of quality. And it sounds literally out of something that you would hear Fairuz singing, for example. It's absolutely perfect. It's brilliant. Now, the thing is, the rest of the soundtrack very much goes for Orientalist tropes and everything, but my point is, Orientalism is a spectrum. And earlier we were talking about the Crusader Kings DLC soundtrack.
Nice strafe.
Absolutely perfect. This is Persian classical music. This is literally Persian classical music. You have a santur articulated generously with ornamentation and everything. You have a microtonal melody. You have a tar joining in, and you have a tombak drum. Literally everything about this is perfect. Absolutely perfect. Of course, the composer says that he collaborated with Iranian musicians, and I am of the opinion. I'm just gonna guess that the more Orientalist sounding parts of the soundtrack are more the composer's work, and all of this was him pretty much just letting his Iranian team loose. Edgar, tu m'avais envoyé genre un morceau à un moment donné, peut-être comme j'ai composé de quoi dans un style iranien, puis j'ai écouté ça, puis j'étais comme...
Is that first drum
C'est pas la double harmonique majeure, c'est pas orientaliste et tout. Comment t'as fait pour être aussi authentique que ça, que moi, un iranien, j'étais comme, c'est iranien.
D'abord, merci. C'est vraiment juste en écouter le plus possible.
Merci.
Tu fais un copy-paste, tu le copies le plus possible, le plus accurate possible. Tu fais ça un bout de temps, après ça, tu développes ton propre son, tes propres twists à toi, personnellement. C'est un des bases, mettons, je connais, mettons, j'avais étudié les notes des modes eux-mêmes, les différentes fonctions, mettons, si c'est tonique, mettons, si c'est finaliste. C'est comme une des pistes que je suis en train de faire d'ailleurs. Mettons, on prend Sega, puis ça c'est la root, c'est la quinte, mettons. La quinte, elle peut varier d'un quart de ton, tu sais.
Ouais.
Fait que mettons, je pourrais faire comme.
Don't touch me again. Get animation.
En théorie, justement, j'ai appris qu'on pouvait twister la note, mettons, de ça à ça, genre.
Ouais.
D'un quart de ton.
Je pense qu'il y en a qui diraient que genre, ah non, mais là t'en demandes trop.
Both shit animations. Both.
Je pense que c'est pas vrai. C'est pas vrai, c'est faisable. Il faut juste s'appliquer, genre. C'est tellement nice parce qu'un des chapitres importants dans la vidéo, là, c'est l'importance de l'articulation. Tu peux expliquer comment, en fait, tu utilises ton doigt. Genre.
Ouais, j'utilise mon doigt, je laisse légèrement l'angle pousser, puis dans le fond, c'est vraiment le setup. Traditionnellement, si tu utilises, c'est comme tu gardes tes mains de même, tu fais juste bouger ton index de même. Moi, j'ai comme repris ça un peu. Puis j'ai modifié mon sens aussi pour que justement ça soit pas doublé non plus.
Ouais.
Pour que ça soit pas doublé, fait que ça sonne plus comme un setup.
So as you can see, there's something very different between writing Orientalist music and actually bothering
Shame I
to
couldn't
learn
understand any of that shit.
On one hand, you have Edgar, who buys books, learns the actual Dasgah music theory of Persian classical music, buys an actual real physical instrument, and plays them using techniques that render these instruments in the traditional way that we use in Iran. You have Jeff Van Dyke, actually using real string sections and incorporating actual Middle Eastern modes, and not just the same double harmonic major and Phrygian mode. You have the composer of the Crusader Kings 3 DLC working closely with Iranian musicians in order to incorporate actual Persian classical music using real instruments, real articulation, real complex microtonal modes. And then you have people not bothering to learn anything about actual Middle Eastern music theory, buying softwares, producing music on those softwares that are basically second-rate imitations of Middle Eastern instruments, not even bothering to put those instruments in their proper ethnic or national or cultural context, and then slapping the terms Persian or Arabian on them. That's why I call Orientalist music babrabi, babrabu, mamma mia, pizzeria of actual Oriental music, in the sense that the similarity between Orientalist music and actual Middle Eastern music is the same as the similarity or the distance between babrabi, babrabu, mamma mia, pizzeria, Mario 64, Lamborghini, and the actual Italian language. On one hand, you have putting in the work of understanding an actual real-life language, a complex set of grammar and syntax and phonology that arose organically within an anthropological context over the course of 2,000 years. And on the other hand, you have a bunch of tropes and cliches and stereotypes that just immediately sound like that thing, but it's a gross exaggeration of that thing.
Oh my God!
It's quite frustrating to see comments of people praising these
That's
songs
so annoying!
Oh, thank you so much for giving me an insight into how Middle Eastern music sounds like, because this is the equivalent of clicking on a YouTube video that is talking the Italian language, and then somebody going, Lamborghini, Mamma Mia, pizzeria, babrabi, babrabu, and people going, oh, thank you, now I know what the Italian language sounds like. Thank you for giving me, thank you for putting in the work of learning to speak Italian. I'm not trying to shit on Orientalist music, but I'm trying to show it for what it is. Orientalist music is undoubtedly beautiful from an artistic point of view. However, just because we enjoy a piece of art does not mean that we need to find mental gymnastics to elevate it above what it actually is. Enjoying a piece of art does not automatically confer upon it the prestige of deep antiquity and anthropology and tradition. First, I want to start by describing the obvious, which is how Orientalism sucks for the people represented by Orientalism. And the most obvious reason is because it completely misrepresents our cultures and who we are. It reduces us down to a bunch of tropes and stereotypes and cliches without actually putting in any work respecting the complex anthropological, ethnomusicological, cultural, linguistic factors that define who we are. Now, you will have noticed that I was a bit highly critical, let's say, of these YouTube composers and not so much of soundtrack artists like Hans Zimmer and everything. And there's a reason for that. A soundtrack is a soundtrack. It does not claim to be Arabian music or Persian music. Soundtracks are not titled this way. The problem is, those videos on YouTube, they are called Persian music, Arabian music, Egyptian music.
This is a bad critique.
I know
He should
that
go hard on these guys.
not as literal
I think he likes these guys, that's why.
Persian, it doesn't literally mean Persian. In their minds, Persian means vibe for cobra, desert sand. Arabian means camel, spice, turban. That's all these words mean to them. But you don't need a PhD in linguistics and communication to understand that. If you post a video that's called Persian music and you offer no more context in the description or a pinned comment, the average person is going to walk away from this video thinking that they've just heard actual Persian music. As somebody who's trying to be an educator of actual historical music and actual ethnic traditions, I constantly have to deal with people who are misinformed by channels like these coming to me saying, oh, you know, these guys have recreated ancient Arabian music. And it's like, no, they fucking haven't. They bought a software that emulates digitally the sound of Iranian and Armenian instruments and Indian instruments, and they're throwing it together and they've called it ancient Arabian. I'm not accusing them of spreading misinformation willfully or that they have bad intention. All that I'm accusing them of is of being extremely careless and spreading misinformation through carelessness. Please understand, I'm not criticizing them for having created Orientalist music. It is absolutely fine. It is their choice. It is a valid form of artistic expression. Now, it is a bunch of lazy stereotypes that are borderline offensive, but art is art. It is a valid form of expression. That's the one that they were inspired by. They have every right to go for that. It just boggles my mind that in the 10 years that some of those videos amassed 15 million views, not once did it occur to them that we are using the name of other cultures whose music we know nothing about, that we haven't even studied. Maybe we should be slightly responsible on some level. Maybe we should just have like a sentence somewhere in the description clarifying that we don't actually know anything about the actual Middle Eastern music. Because they're very thorough in their descriptions when it comes to listing old softwares that they use. Oh, they're very thorough about that. But a single sentence of, you know, we don't actually know what Middle Eastern music sounds like, this is not literally Middle Eastern music, that never even crossed their minds in the process of gaining upwards of 15 million views. Not like they should have changed the title or even changed the music or removed the video, just a sentence in the description. And they could not be bothered to even do that much, which leads me to two conclusions. Either these guys actually think that they've written actual Middle Eastern music, or more likely, and I think that's the more likely answer, they never cared. We really should not be surprised that taking into consideration the misrepresentation of those cultures never once crossed the minds of those musicians, because you look at the titles, things like Desert Prince, Princess of Persia, Cobras in the Sand, that's what a Swedish 4-year-old's idea of Middle Eastern culture is. I'm not surprised that it never occurred to those guys not to misrepresent the anthropological reality of the Middle East, because as far as they care, the Middle East isn't a natural anthropological reality made up of actual people and actual cultures, or every bit as tangible as the Scots and the Dutch being actual people and actual cultures. To them, the Middle East is like Narnia or Middle Earth. It's some abstract, exotic other that exists for them to fantasize and fetishize in an exoticized manner. It never occurred to them that Iranians and Arabs are actual people and they have actual instruments and an actual musical tradition, and maybe if we're going to use their names, maybe we should do so with some amount of responsibility. Somebody whose idea of Middle Eastern cultures amounts to desert in the sand and desert prince and bazaar merchants, that's exactly how you would expect them to treat the Middle East. Based on the comments that these videos have received, we can see that the vast majority of people who have listened to this have no idea what they've actually been listening to. The first example of Arabian and Middle Eastern music available on the internet to most people is neither Arabian nor Middle Eastern music, but rather a bunch of lazy cliches and stereotypes cobbled together using softwares, and no understanding whatsoever or effort put into actually understanding the actual music theory. And here we get to how Orientalism did Westerners dirty. For decades, Western audiences have been robbed of the possibility of experiencing one of the richest regions of the world in terms of cultural diversity, architecture-wise, literature-wise, language-wise, clothing-wise, history-wise, and music-wise. I have shown that picture many times to Westerners, and they say, "What is that?" And I tell them, that is historical Iranian armor of the elite soldiers of the Sasanian Empire. And they go, "Holy shit, this looks amazing. Why don't we ever get that in our representations of Eastern media?" Yeah, you could. You could get that. But the problem is, Orientalism won't let you. You could see the incredibly diverse clothings that the Ottomans, the Safavids, the Achaemenids, and all those diverse civilizations throughout the 5,000 years of Middle Eastern history have had. Or you could just be given the same slop repeatedly. Orientalism deciding for you that, nah, Western audiences will be confused if they don't have turbans and scimitars, so just give them the same repetitive stereotypical armors and clothing over and over again. I will die on the hill that Orientalism has done Western audiences dirty. It has robbed them of so many incredible soundscapes, traditional instruments, modes, melodies. This entire world, this entire treasure trove of amazing aesthetics lies out there. But Western media keeps robbing them of that possibility for no reason other than
taking for granted that they're too stupid to be able to absorb anything else. A common comment that I get often is people saying Western audiences are not ready for non-Orientalist music. Orientalist music is palatable to the Western ear, and therefore that's all we can expect the Westerners to enjoy. That is completely false in my experience. In my experience, half of my subscriber base is from the West, and they absolutely adore the Middle Eastern music that I produce. A comment that I get very often by Westerners who discover my Epic
I'm not reloading a mag.
Holy shit, I never heard that. I never heard those sounds. I never heard those instruments. I never heard those modes. This sounds completely different. Western audiences crave and thirst for authentic representations of other cultures, because the moment you authentically decide to represent other cultures, you unlock things that are new from the Western perspective. See, Orientalism is the norm, and this is why I think Orientalism is absolutely horrendous. It's not just insulting to us Easterners. More than anybody, it is insulting to Westerners, because it takes Westerners for idiots, and so doing, for the past 100 years, Westerners have consistently been robbed and deprived of actual representations of the East, actual anthropological realities that are far deeper, far more nuanced, far more layered than this fucking surface bullshit of tropes and stereotypes cobbled together. Comparatively, look at what it looks like when you treat those cultures as actual cultures and not just a bunch of stereotypes. Let's say that I want to make a piece of music about the Safavids, an Iranian dynasty who ruled in the early modern era. Well, the Safavids were Sufis. Sufis are the Islamic mystics, and in this region, they enter musical trances using rhythmical breaths. So I can use that as the basis of the music. What instruments should I use? Well, I could use the tambour, because in the Iranian plateau, the tambour is closely tied to Sufi musical practices, and I'll get a Kurdish tambour player to play for me.
That's the end
What
of
mode
it.
to play it in? Well, Esfahan is widely seen in Iran as the royal mode that is applied to the court and imperial sounds and everything. Heard less so in folk music, but very much heard in Persian classical music. That'll give it that sort of haughty royal sound. Shah Ismail, the founder of the Safavid dynasty, was a poet who wrote in an early form of the Azerbaijani language, so I could use these as lyrics for the song, his actual poetry written by himself.
Allah Allah,
And I'll add Persian lyrics, because of course they were an Iranian dynasty, so their language of state was Persian, and I can get an actual Persian classical vocalist to sing, not with Arabic vocal techniques, not with Indian vocal techniques, but with actual Persian classical vocal techniques.
You should be dead. You know?
And then you would have a unique soundscape that you've never heard in any Western media ever that sounds like this. Or instead, you could just have a representation of the Safavids like this. You could get to know that the Middle East has many different biomes, like northern Iran, where my people, the Mazandarani people, and our close relatives, the Gilani people, developed our own cultures in the mountains and the forest. Or you could just get the same representation of the Middle East, which is... Imagine if Hollywood decided to make a movie about the Sasanian Empire, the empire, the second Persian empire of the Sasanians. Imagine if it rooted its music in modern Iranian music, thematically harkening to ancient Iranian music, and it used these ancient modes and everything, and Middle Persian lyrics in the soundtrack. You would have something that sounds like this. But instead, because Western media is stubbornly Orientalist, you'll get this. Imagine soundtracks set in Turkey and Anatolia that incorporate the sound of the Turkish ashik, the Turkish bards playing their traditional balama. Imagine soundtracks with shots of people going through parts of Anatolia to this music.
Shot Leaple's lost. Fuck out my window.
But instead, because Western media works the way it does, what you'll get instead is this. Imagine a Prince of Persia game that is actually rooted in Iranian culture. Imagine a Prince of Persia wearing Sasanian armor. But instead, all you're going to get is the Prince of Persia wearing Arabic headwears. Imagine if Western media actually understood that in Iran, we have our own mythology. You know how Greek mythology has its own lore, its own characters, heroes, and folklore and everything? We have our own in Iran. You have the story of Zal, who was born with white hair, therefore cast upon a mountain to die there by his parents. But then he was rescued by the Simor, the great bird of wisdom who speaks to humans, a bird who is often sent by Ahura Mazda, the god of light, to fight against Ahriman, the god of evil. And then his son, Rostam, is born. Rostam, who is the Iranian Heracles, wearing that horn helmet, and he goes to Mazandaran to fight the white div, the white demons. Chances are, if you're from the West and you're watching this video, you never knew that we Iranians literally have our own mythology that is every bit as complex with its own unique creatures and everything as Greek mythology. Consider what you've been missing on. You've been missing on an entire mythology, like Norse mythology, like Greek mythology, with its own creatures, its own heroes, its own stories, its own betrayals, its own tragedies, and you've been robbed of that completely by Western media. Because anytime it approaches Iran, what does it do? Fucking turbans, fucking scimitars, flying fucking carpets, magic genie in a lamp, sand, desert, camel, cobra. Why? Because Western media treats its audience as idiots who are too closed-minded to accept anything outside of that. I think that shows how insulting Orientalism is towards the Westerners more than anyone else. Anyway, I don't have much else to say about the video. Thank you for listening to this very long analysis, and if you're interested in more of the subject, if you now realize just how dirty Orientalism did you by keeping you in the dark about musical traditions that you've never heard about, you know, go look for them. Don't just stop at these software-based things and everything, and you'll see that there's an entire treasure trove that'll open you to the possibilities of what you could have been experiencing.
Maybe I need to go to squares early. Let's keep the windows boarded. Is that the end? The end. Of my cycle. What I meant, by the way. Just pick it up. Oh, God. Oh. You need a little vibe. End of the cycle. Don't you dare! Oh my word. No! Why? Why did I die though? Here, man. Fucking crazy. Space. Very slow 20. Fuck. That's so unfortunate. God. Plenty of times too. I'm not gonna lie, I pulled towards the end of the round. No. This is really bad. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, it's not horrible. Needed that. Over. This is so annoying. I needed that fucking ball to go on. I didn't get the indicator. Of course. Of course, when I buy QR. I've lost my touch. I don't know how though. It doesn't feel like I'm playing smooth at all. Oh my god, that's the worst nade spot and I still used it. I'm a fucking idiot. Oh, just die. Oh my god. Well, at least I got to 22. But I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna play anymore. It's over. A bunch of random zombies. It's so fucking over. Randoms. Playing differently, I might just do 2 woods. 4 woods seems a little bit too much. What did I do wrong? I'm doing something different. Because they're always blocking me. Huh. I knew I was gonna die. I couldn't hack a single order.